I grew up in a Marwadi family. I never thought I would potentially build a career in finance. I was always quite clear that I wanted to come back to India. My advice to entrepreneurs, for every 10 no's, there's always one yes. We are in the business of financial advisory where we typically help companies raise capital.
Hello friends, so today we have invited a very special guest. He completed his education from Harvard University, then came back to India to start his own company. And now he is running private equity advisory Avenir Capital, which helps in debt syndication, finance, re-engineering. Mainly his startups helps बिग कंपनीज कि किस तरीके से एसेट्स को बिल्ड किया जाए, रिस्ट्रक्चर किया जाए, मोनेटाइज किया जाए एंड मेनी मोर थिंग्स. सो वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट नन अदर देन मिस्टर शिवम बजाज. In this podcast, we are going to understand the journey of Shivam Bajaj, how he started, what problem he faced, and how he is now closing billions of dollars of deals, how he got that Ganga Expressway ka deal, and how Avenir Capital is helping big companies to crack the bigger and bigger financial deals. And this podcast is going to be in English, but language is not a barrier for us. We will learn from every direction. So thank you so much, Shivam ji, for accepting our invitation. We hope this conversation is going to help our audience, and especially I believe it's going to help us also. Thank you so much for coming for this podcast, the Founder Talk. Before we start into the problem, I wanted to understand how your journey started, your education, where it happened, and then how your journey continued.
Thanks, Lokesh, for having me on this talk. I grew up in a Marwadi family. As a typical Marwadi, we grew up in an environment wherein dinner table conversations are centered around the business world, talking about key developments taking place in India and globally. My father was into the financial services segment, and he runs a company that helps companies typically raise debt. And he was also an avid follower of the stock markets. I was always interested in entrepreneurship. I was always interested in running a business. I would not want to do a job and build my own business.
And when you realize this key, I have to do business, at what age?
It would probably be at a very, very young age. I just realized I wanted to work for myself and not work for other people. I was never really a numbers person. If you asked me maybe 15 years ago, I never thought I would potentially build a career in finance. I always thought of myself as someone who would probably foray into building a consumer brand, because of my profound fondness of marketing. Growing up, I used to see brands like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Nike, etc. And I was always fascinated, by the way they were built and the recall that they had. I think through the course of my journey, it eventually led me into the financial services space.
Before coming to this financial space, I wanted to understand from the education perspective also. So you were in India, and then what made you decide to go back abroad, US, and study such a prestige colleges, Babson and Harvard University? Was it the family's decision? Was it your decision? How that played out for you?
My family did push me to go abroad. My sisters particularly played a key role. Both of them had done their masters in finance and marketing from the UK, and they did push me to go abroad and do my undergrad education in the US. So that's when I started keenly appearing for my SATs. I was doing the IB program in school. So I think the general environment for most IB kids was to go abroad and study. So I think my family environment plus, my schooling, wherein doing the IB program, there was naturally a sense of, wanting to go abroad and study. I went to Babson. Babson was a college which was very renowned for entrepreneurship. At least initially, there were a few courses where you could take pilot to do your own business, come up with a business plan, come up with an idea. And, the third or the fourth year, given my family background of finance, I decided to pursue a concentration in finance and economics. And that's what really sparked my interest in finance. So I think I had not pre-decided while going to college, Lokesh, that I wanted to do finance or I wanted to take finance courses. It was a more generalized bachelor's in business administration that I was going to study. In the third year, that's when I decided that maybe I should take on a couple of courses within finance, just given my family background.
When you were there for almost 4 years, so in that 4 year, what thought were running in your mind? Was it like stay in US, and because that is one of the biggest economy of the world, driving factor of the world, or to come back to India? Was it like what was going on in the mind at that time?
I think I was always quite clear that I wanted to come back to India.
Hmm.
My family, my friends, my ecosystem was here in India. Like
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned, I knew that I didn't want to do a job, and work for someone else. So I think, in that time, I think the thought of starting a business abroad was quite daunting. Uh, I knew that if I, wanted to do something by myself, I think coming to India, where I have some sort of base. Would most certainly be prudent.
So basically, it was very clear to you. Just go there and educate yourself, and then come back to India. And so, when you came back to India, so were you trying to identify the different sectors, segments? The way you said, ki in initial days, I mean, early childhood, you were thinking ki you will start more of consumer type business. So, were you exploring the different type of businesses, or was it like very obvious ki I'll start in this, the family wala part, I'll continue. How was your thought when you came back?
Yeah, so I think very interesting question. I think I came back from college and I joined my family business, which was focused on debt advisory. So usually hota hai ki the moment you come back to college, your parents start asking you, okay, what is it that you're going to do, and you just realize, okay, I'll at least start going to office from the next day. And
Mm-hmm.
like all other college graduates, that's what I started going to office the very next day after coming back to India. And
Mm-hmm.
I started, working in the business, doing some debt advisory. Over time, that did spark my interest even more into finance. But I think, I'll take a step back, location, probably go to after graduating from Babson, I took a few courses at, Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the, key courses that I undertook was focused on private equity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got very, very interested, around learning the art of valuing businesses. I got very interested to understanding how the whole private equity, sector operates.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back and started working in my family business and realized that it's purely on debt, I saw a huge opportunity the equity markets have, and that's what eventually sparked my interest into setting up an investment banking business focused on a mix of equity and debt raising.
So, what was that aha moment when you realized after coming back to India, when you were searching or you were trying to identify if a finance में ही तो करना है, that was clear in your mind in the Harvard. But यहाँ पे आने के बाद what was that aha moment when you realized कि no, I'll start this for sure. I'm seeing some spark in this space.
Yeah, I think, I started Avenor in 2018 initially. And it stemmed from two things. One, of course, was my family background and the expertise that we had into financial services. I did not want to venture into something completely different, but I wanted to venture into something complementary. Honestly, I thought that falling into investment banking is quite complementary to, what we do. It would be exciting. At the same time, it would be challenging. So that's how I really decided to.
One very silly question: how you came with this name Avenir?
It's actually a word in French derived from the word avenir, which means future. The whole pretext of the business is to build and to always keep looking into the future, to keep, identifying trends that could be relevant from an advisory standpoint, and always be agile to keep reinventing yourself based on the needs of what the future presents.
And when you started this, let's go back. चालू हो गया, कंपनी बना दी, and of course बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम आए होंगे. Employees लाओ, hire करो, ये करो, वो करो. But what was the biggest challenge you faced at that time? While just to kickstart this. Okay, let's kickstart. Let's get the first project. Let's get the first assignment. How was your journey?
Honestly, when I decided to start the whole investment banking piece, I was not fully clear on how to value a business myself, or how the industry operates. And I learned that from interviewing people. I used to ask, sometimes questions that even I didn't know the answers to. And from candidate responses, I got to learning and understanding the business. So I think my first very hurdle was to gain an understanding of the business, which I did not have. The second was, of course, the limited track record, right? I was maybe 26, 27 back then, and the limited track record that, I had personally in the fundraising side, limited track record that I had on the investment banking side. Investment banking, of course, is a competitive market. There is good amount of competition from global as well as local players. Attracting talent, right, and getting people to believe in my vision and what I really wanted to build. The key challenges that I had, I would say, I learned a great amount. And I think my key learning was that, look, you should always be persistent because you should never give up, never let go. For every 10 no's, there's always one yes. And that one yes is, sometimes can change the path of what you do.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let me be honest, even कई बार मैं podcast में लोगों से पूछता हूँ and I ask them just like a fifth standard student कि मुझे नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, आप मुझे बताओ how you are operating, because everyone has a different skill set and what you said, Nat, every 10 try में 9 will be no, 1 will be yes. So that we have faced. We raised fund from Xiaomi in 2019, 42 crore का फंड रेज किया था हमने. तो उस टाइम पे इतने लोगों से मिले थे, ना एंड फाइनली वन यस, एंड दैट वी रेज्ड इन Feb 2020 for Work India. That startup I started Feb 2020, and after, and by the way, Xiaomi is from China, and then the COVID broke out. उसके बाद तो हमें इतना रिलीफ मिला था कि अगर फंड नहीं होता तो कोविड सर्वाइव कैसे करते. So मतलब that was I was able to relate कि ना होता है, ना ही होता है, हर बार हम मान के चलते हैं, we have to give our best and ना ही होगा. But you started and right now you are doing amazing. You got involved in I think you closed billions of dollars का deals. One, your company is closing, and you got involved in multiple big projects like Ganga Expressway projects, I think. So how was the journey? I mean, so let's say you set it up the things, you kick-started the thing, and how you started approaching clients and the people, how you identified कि ये problem exist करता है, this infrastructure thing, people are not able to raise fund.
Initially when we started off, looking at quite a few sectors, right? I think my first natural preference, as I discussed, was to start looking at the consumer sector because of my, previous, say, profound passion, I would say, for the consumer sector, right? Only to realize that, in the consumer sector, the size of deals is relatively small. I think what we eventually realized after some amount of trial and error was that, in the whole infrastructure and real asset space, there is a very significant value proposition that we can take to our clients, and that space really becomes our core strength. Infrastructure, personally, I believe that जब आप से power plant लगा रहे हो या सड़क बना रहे हो, there are two types of engineering that are equally important. I keep saying, एक तो होता है civil engineering, and the other is financial financial engineering. We believe that we have a very strong knowledge across both equity and debt as products, and that helps us to re-engineer assets. To devise the most optimal capital structure. कि कितना debt होना चाहिए, कितनी equity होनी चाहिए. How do you ensure an optimal utilization of funds that can give the maximum returns to shareholders and asset.
So let me just ask this again. ये सब already चल रहा था. In the country, people were doing the projects, and the best part is you have selected one of the fastest growing sector like transmission, power, and highways की तो मतलब line ही लग गई है. And specifically you selected this in 2018, and last 4-5 year में तो this sector is going double, almost 30-40% का compounding. So ये जब आपने select किया, then how you presented to these companies, to Avenir कि here we are going to help, how you identified the problem कि आपको ये problem आ रही है, instead of you doing it, let us help and do it.
Firstly, I think see, when we started off in 2018, at that time there were a lot of challenges within the infrastructure sector. So I think there were a lot of land acquisition related challenges, a lot of infrastructure projects in the country that started off, taken off, but had not gotten complete. And typically, within the banking system, most of the NPAs were all pertaining to infrastructure assets. So infra as a sector, I would say, was quite cloudy at that time. At that time, I think investors were not as willing to, commit capital. Developers were quite stretched for liquidity. Their balance sheets were not that clean. They had a huge amount of debt on their balance sheets. Every adversity, there is an opportunity, right? And that's what we saw. At that point in time, there was a general sense, within the financing community that there was a reluctance to fund those spaces. That's the opportunity that we saw, right? That's the opportunity that we felt that we can probably, through our knowledge, through our understanding of these spaces, look and advise clients and help them raise funds. Which were not as readily available back then. And that's what, really, that's the opportunity that we saw.
So in this specific niche, इस niche में क्या पहले भी कंपनियां अवेलेबल थी? मेन क्वेश्चन इज कि लेट्स से इसके पहले भी अगर इफ आई एम डूइंग अ पावर प्रोजेक्ट और लेट्स से पावर ट्रांसमिशन प्रोजेक्ट, आई हैव टू रेज फंड, आई नीड ऑफ कोर्स फाइनेंशियल help. So one, I can do it in-house. Second, there are companies who are who are working in the financial segments like investment raising, all those things. But unke liye, this is not the niche. This is not their special niche. This is like just one of the work for them. So उस time पे I'm asking at that time कि क्या ऐसा कोई special niche company available थी, उनसे competition था आपका, और you created something this unique कि इस niche में we are going to work and we will specialize this segment like anything.
I think इसमें जो लोकेश था कि I think कोई लोग खुद करते थे उस time. Some companies continue to fundraise by themselves. I think some companies continue to outsource fundraising, and there are some companies, like you said, who do multiple sectors and not just infrastructure. I think the conscious call that we decided to take was that we believe that in the infrastructure sector, just like your cement, just like your bitumen, just like steel, raw material is also capital.
Correct.
Because these are capital intensive sectors. And our business largely being a fundraising business, our success is aligned to the amount of capital we are able to raise for our clients. What we saw and what we realized is that we want to focus on larger ticket items rather than small ticket items. What we found that the kind of deal sizes that infrastructure gives you, no other sector combined gives you those kind of sizes, because the kind of capital investment that infrastructure requires, it's potentially the largest amount of capital investment that is there compared to any other.
Yes.
So I think we thought and believe that we wanted to create a business model that aligns to larger spending, given that our core business purely focused, or the success of our business largely depends on the amount of funds we're able to raise for our client. I think what the rest of the players are doing is sort of not something that we are worried about. We decided that we want to continue to build a niche in this space. And we put our heads down and continue to focus to build this niche segment.
And next is I wanted to understand one more thing. Let's say कोई आज company चालू करता है, ठीक है? I'm taking the from scratch. Let's say Jio ने पूरा अपना चालू किया and they wanted to set up. I'm giving just one example. They wanted to set up a full या फिर जैसे भी Starlink अगर आता है इंडिया में, तो उनको पूरा infrastructure build करना है. For example, let's say. तो वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड करने, नाउ दे आर एट इनिशियल स्टेज, दे वांट टू स्टार्ट बिजनेस, दैट्स व्हाट दे आर वेरी क्लियर. बट अब वो लैंड एक्विजिशन से लेकर के सब कुछ जो पूरा आगे का काम होने वाला है, एवेन्यूर कैपिटल इज मेनली फॉर दोज पीपल जो अभी जस्ट चालू किए हैं. और सेकेंड इज, लेट्स से आई हैव ऑलरेडी अ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, मेरे पास है, सेटअप है. लेट्स से टेक एग्जांपल ऑफ वोडाफोन, माइट बी दे वांट टू एक्सपांड to another state or another segment, है ना? तो कौन से segment में आपका बड़ा रोल होता है और the same role होता है? If you can just describe at what stage company should approach you कि approach Avenir Capital कि मुझे अब यहाँ पे आपकी help है लगेगी.
Look, same होता है. मतलब our client would be typically a company who's just starting off, or a client would be an established player. So I think whenever anybody is thinking about either putting up any kind of capital expenditure, they should think about us. Or when anybody is thinking about optimizing the capital expenditure that they have incurred, they should think about us. Or if anybody is thinking about monetizing the capital expenditure that they have invested, they should think about us. So I would say either from the time of when you're thinking about investing into capital expenditure or putting up capital expenditure, when you want to optimize that by, say, refinancing it or optimizing the cost of capital, or potentially when you want to think about monetization or raising or dilution of equity.
So इसी को मैं just rephrase कर रहा हूँ. You are saying कि let's say एकदम start है, niche है, अभी just चालू हुआ है. They can also approach you. Just we can take the example of Starlink. They are starting in India.
Absolutely.
Second is already infrastructure है, जैसे वोडाफोन का, but वो इतना re-engineered नहीं है. Maybe they are in debt or someone is in debt. उसको रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग उनको करना है. दे कैन ऑल्सो अप्रोच यू. थर्ड इज ऑलरेडी एवरीथिंग इज फाइन. लेट्स टेक एग्जांपल ऑफ एयरटेल. एवरीथिंग इज रनिंग फाइन बट वी वांट टू ऑप्टिमाइज. देन दे ऑल्सो कैन अप्रोच यू. करेक्ट. तीनों लोग अलग अलग स्टेज में दे कैन अप्रोच यू. That's amazing. That's amazing. Basically, it's true word of finance re-engineering in terms of assets. If you have asset, we will help you to optimize. If you don't have asset, we will help you to create, of course, the infrastructure and everything. Correct?
Absolutely. And sometimes, okay, we're also involved in all three elements, for the same asset, where we sometimes help a client build the asset. We help them to potentially refi the asset and optimize the capital structure. And then we help them to monetize the asset also. So, oftentimes, for the same asset, we can be present across the value chain and the life of the asset.
That's amazing. And you got award for that also,
Yes.
investment banking emerging award. So that itself is showing that you guys are doing amazing work.
I would like to highlight that typically we as an investment bank focus on just infrastructure. I would say most of the other banks are having a focus across multiple sectors. So I think in the last 4 out of the 5 years, we would have been the top 10, advisors by deal value in the private equity and M&A space, almost 4 out of 5 years. And this year we won the Emerging Investment Bank of the Year award. All of this with our single sector focus.
अच्छा, एक पर्सनल क्वेश्चन मैं पूछ रहा हूँ. जब आपने फर्स्ट डील क्लोज किया, व्हेन यू क्लोज द फर्स्ट डील versus you close the biggest deal, excitement किसमें ज्यादा था, and what was the reaction of your family, your sister, your father? How was the environment in house?
Yeah, I think the satisfaction of closing a deal is great. I think the first deal that you close, of course, the sense of accomplishment is great. But I think as investment bankers, we go through so much of emotion in the journey. I think, you've raised funds yourself, Lokesh, so I'm sure you understand that no fundraising process is a straight linear line. There are lots of ups and downs. And I think at the end of the journey, it most certainly feels very, very satisfying. But then you're also aware that you need to start with the next fundraise, the next client, and the journey goes on. So I think it is a very, very satisfying process. And that feeling is great.
So घर पे कैसे बात होती है? इंग्लिश में बात होती है, मारवाड़ी में बात होती है? पिताजी क्या बोलते हैं कि बेटा बड़ा हो गया, चंगा हो गया? क्या बोलते हैं मारवाड़ी में, कैसे बोलेंगे?
Mostly English पे बात. We end up speaking mostly in English.
ठीक है. तो उन्होंने, उनका क्या कॉम्प्लीमेंट रहा कि ये तुम नए लेवल पे ले जा रहे हो या अच्छा कर रहे हो, या वो हमेशा आपके सजेशन मोड में ही रहते हैं कि अरे ये करो वो करो? मैं कैसा एनवायरनमेंट रहता है घर पे?
It's always an humble environment where of course every success is celebrated, and at the same time one is cognizant about how to keep moving forward. So I think every milestone has to be enjoyed, every milestone has to be celebrated, but one also has to keep be cognizant that after every milestone you need to keep growing upward. I think that's very much the overall atmosphere at home.
So अच्छा, मैं अपने एक पर्सनल चीज बता. जैसे जो भी मैं काम करता हूँ, मेरी मदर को उतना नहीं समझता when I was doing the startup and everything, but she used to enjoy when I tell her कि ये सब हुआ है, ऐसा हुआ है, वैसा हुआ है. आपके केस में आपका मदर के साथ क्या इंटरेक्शन होता है? उनको सब समझ में आता है exactly what you are doing, or it's like somewhat?
उतना समझ में नहीं आता because I think finance थोड़े technical ज्यादा हो जाते हैं. So I think she obviously understands the bigger milestones, but I think the granularity she doesn't understand so much. So I think oftentimes when I give an interview or I talk about something more technical and specific, I think she feels very happy seeing my coverage in the newspapers. Feels very happy seeing the success. But I think at times she's not able to appreciate the technicalities of some of these things.
तो आप उनको कैसे समझाते हो? क्या बात होती है उनसे? ये सब नहीं होती है?
नहीं, ऑफ कोर्स होती है, समझाने की कोशिश तो हमेशा जारी रहती है, बट आई थिंक समटाइम्स या she tends to understand some of the things, but some of the things, the very very technical ones, I think she just feels happy that I'm on the right track and I'm getting the successes that I deserve.
That's great. That's amazing. And I always, when I post the video, na, my mother always, send that like. She don't understand much of this finances. English में है तो अब तो और भी नहीं समझ में आएगा उनको. But वो comment में जरूर एक ऐसा hurt भेज देती हैं कि अच्छा लगा. And she is in UP. I'm in Bangalore right now. वैसे मेरी family मुंबई में रहती है. So let's come back to Avenir Capital का offerings. एक होता है एडवाइजरी कि मैं आपको एडवाइस कर रहा हूँ, यू डू इट. सेकंड इज मैं आपको एडवाइस कर रहा हूँ, वी विल हेल्प यू टू डू इट. थर्ड इज वी आर एडवाइजिंग यू प्लस वी विल डू इट विथ यू. हेवी लिफ्टिंग वी विल डू इट. सो इसमें तीनों में से कैसा अप्रोच आपका रहता है, या ये तीनों में अलग अलग कंपनीज पे डिपेंड करता है? हाउ दिस वर्क्स?
अलग अलग कंपनीज पे डिपेंड्स. आई थिंक as far as we are concerned, we are ready to provide all the three, where we are ready to even do all the heavy lifting. So I think it depends. I think what we believe in, location is full alignment with the client, right? And I think our whole business is centered on client, right? And we do what the client wants, and we do what's right for the client. We give strategic and unconflicted advice. So I think we adapt to what, being in a service business, we adapt to what the requirements of the client are.
Got it. So I'll say one thing, कि आप इतने निश सेगमेंट में हो, इतना बढ़िया काम कर रहे हो, एंड विद गॉड ग्रेस हम डेवलप कंट्री बनेंगे तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के बिना तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं है, कुछ भी कर लो. एंड विदाउट कंपनीज लाइक एवेन्यूर कैपिटल जो एक्चुअली इसमें वर्क कर रही हैं, हेल्प कर रही हैं लोगों को, मे बी वी नीड मल्टीपल एंटरप्रेन्योर्स लाइक यू. सो आपकी जो ये एंटरप्रेन्योर जर्नी रही है, इससे आपको क्या अभी तक क्या सीखने मिला है, एंड व्हाट यू वांट टू कन्वे टू द पीपल हु आर वाचिंग दिस? मैं आपको एक छोटा सा इंसिडेंट भी बताता हूँ इसके पहले कि आप आंसर करो. मेरे एक फ्रेंड है IIT बॉम्बे से, उन्होंने इस स्पेस को पूरा चेक किया कि एनर्जी स्पेस में कुछ करना है, मेनली द सोलार एंड ट्रांसमिशन वाला पार्ट था, एंड ही डिड द रिसर्च फॉर 1 quarter. फाइनली ही वाज नॉट एबल टू पेनिट्रेट. वो बोले स्टार्ट ही नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ कि इतना हेवी कैपिटल है, चालू ही नहीं हो रहा है, समझ में ही नहीं आ रहा है इसको कैसे चालू करूँ. आई थिंक देन ही मूव टुवर्ड्स सम फिनटेक मॉडल वेयर इट्स लाइट वेट मॉडल. सो ऐसे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स को आप कुछ बताना चाहोगे, कैसे आपने पेनिट्रेट किया और कैसे क्या करना चाहिए, क्या अप्रोच लेना चाहिए, एंड उसमें एवेन्यूर कैपिटल भी कुछ हेल्प कर सकता है या कैसे होगा?
My advice to entrepreneurs, who are looking at setting up something in the broader infrastructure space, is to maybe start with a service-led approach. So I think you provide some services, be it some kind of EPC related service, be it some kind of operation and maintenance service, be it related to some fundraising kind of service, be it some asset management service. So I think, or probably start off in the manufacturing segment, wherein you typically say manufacture something that could be complementary to what the broader infrastructure sector would consume as a raw material or as a OEM. So I would say that these are multiple ways in which you should probably look to start off, rather than getting into the shoes of a developer on day one, because that is very, very capital intensive. And then I think over a period of time, you can move up the value chain. Wherein if you start with an EPC or as an EPC company, I think the general aspiration for every EPC player at some time becomes कि, मैं मेरा खुद का assets own करूँगा, I make my own assets, I own my own assets over a period of time. So I think that's the general progression or the general journey that one should look to move towards.
So basically you're saying either start with some services which the whole ecosystem need, or maybe start with some smaller part where the whole ecosystem needs some manufacturing, something which will complement the system, and then evolve over the time. The more we will get time to understand, and then we can evolve.
Absolutely.
And next is what's your belief about the government role in this particular heavyweight segment? Like infrastructure, as you said, it's very heavyweight, very capital intensive structure. तो इसमें गवर्नमेंट का रोल, मतलब जनरल में पूछ रहा हूँ कि क्या उनका कितना रोल होता है अगर इस सेक्टर को ऊपर उठाना है? बिकॉज इंडिविजुअल के लिए तो बहुत मुश्किल है जस्ट टू स्टार्ट द बिजनेस, स्पेसिफिकली द डेवलपमेंट वाला साइड.
Government has come out with a lot of schemes, be it focused on renewable energy, be it connectivity like airports, roads, be it data centers, be it smart meters, be it transmission. So if I look at the broader subsectors within infrastructure, I think there's been a very, very strong government policy uh, that is there to support various pillars within infrastructure. And this is very common across India, is that a lot of time there are a lot of delays in terms of project completion, right? Because say for instance, maybe कोई जगह में land availability मुश्किल हो जाता है, या कोई connectivity की वजह से काम बंद हो जाता है, या कोई forest clearance या environmental clearance नहीं मिलता है. What could probably be helpful over time is for the government to find ways in which these approval processes can be, further expedited. I think a lot of change, a lot of positive movement has happened over the last 5 to 7 years. I think there is still some way to go. So my sense is that the government is of course headed in the very, very right direction. I think they have policies that are second to none, to promote infrastructure development in the country. A lot of other countries are using the playbook set by our government to implement infrastructure development in their emerging economies. So I think the government has done a great job, but maybe figuring out ways to expedite the approval process could most certainly further lead to an impetus.
बेसिकली अगर हमें और बड़ा करना है और फास्ट करना है तो दे आर इन राइट डायरेक्शन, बट और ज्यादा करें तो और हेल्प होगा ऑफ कोर्स पूरी इकोनॉमी को. करेक्ट?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How the clients approach you? Do you approach them or they approach you, or it's like both ways चलता रहता है? कैसा होता है ये?
So it works both ways. I think we tend to approach a lot of clients who we feel could be relevant. We of course have deep sector studies. So with the help of our deep sector reports, our sector teams reach out to various clients that we feel may be relevant. And then I think there are a few clients that also do come in through referrals. Clients who we work with, they tend to give referrals to other potential clients.
Last, your fitness wala thing. I was reading one article where you were mentioning about squash and other things, running. So ये fitness का freak, ये कैसे आया आपको कि fit भी रहना है, सिर्फ पैसा ही नहीं बनाना है, wealth के साथ health भी चाहिए?
See, one has to be, I would say, disciplined. ऐसा नहीं है कि you want to focus all your strength on fitness, that your work gets impacted. ऐसा नहीं है कि you want to focus all your energy on work so that you're not fit. I think longevity of life also becomes equally important. My fitness regime helps me with three things. Running helps you with consistency because if you're running at a constant speed for a certain number of kilometers, it helps you to stay consistent. I think playing a sport like squash challenges you, gives you the sudden outbursts that you need, in business life also. And, weight training gives you your body and your muscle strength. At times, you need to have those bursts of energy, maybe when you're doing client pitches or when you're running a deal, where you have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone. I think deal making is has a lot of ups and downs, and I think mental strength becomes very, very important to be able to manage the various ups and downs that this business does.
So while doing the research about you, while deciding the flow of this podcast, I was very excited to meet you because I saw superbly well in terms of education, superbly well in terms of risk taking. You started Avenir Capital. Then in terms of consistency, you are doing this since last 7-8 years, and of course you are killing it. Every year you are trying to crack the bigger deals. And the fourth one, when I saw the fitness part, I was like very happy कि oh my god, it's well balanced entrepreneurship कि सब कुछ हो रहा है लाइफ में. So thank you so much for sharing everything in such a detailed way. And personally ये पढ़ने के बाद मैंने खुद भी फिर और एक्सरसाइज किया थोड़ा सा. जब शिवम जी कर सकते हैं इतना सब करने के बाद हेवी लिफ्टिंग कर सकते हैं तो थोड़ा और एक पुशअप तो और बनता है, एक और सेगमेंट तो बनता है. तो थैंक यू सो मच, इवन इंस्पायर अस. थैंक यू सो मच. एनी लास्ट थिंग यू वांट टू शेयर जो आपको लगता है कि इस पॉडकास्ट में हमने कवर नहीं की है या आपको शेयर करना है टू पीपल, टू anyone or to yourself?
I think just generally, an advice to maybe young entrepreneurs, and that advice would be typically it's all about the mindset. You have to have an ambition wherein you think big and have that fire in your belly. And I would say it's very important to be, disciplined and consistent. And I think that fire in your belly, which will really help you to create things. India needs a lot of young entrepreneurs in order to keep its growth journey intact.
Thank you so much, Shivam ji. And what's your next goal? What is the next big deal?
I think we shall see that unfolding, and I will let you know once it unfolds.
नेक्स्ट बिग डील होती है तो आप एक बार फिर से पॉडकास्ट पे आना पसंद करेंगे?
Most certainly, most certainly.
So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, this discussion. I would say it's a simple discussion, and जिन लोगों को भी इससे हेल्प मिली है, you can comment in segment. You can ask your questions. अगर कुछ specific question होंगे, we would send it to the Shivam ji. And of course you can reach him on LinkedIn also. Thank you one more time, Shivam ji, for coming and for giving your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving an opportunity to share my journey.
So thank you so much for watching this complete podcast. I hope इस पॉडकास्ट से आपको एक नई जानकारी मिली होंगी, कई सारे नए क्वेश्चंस भी आए होंगे मन में, नई इंस्पिरेशन भी हो सकता है आपको मिली हो। एंड इसके अलावा भी अगर आपके कुछ क्वेश्चंस हो, यू कैन आस्क योर क्वेश्चंस इन कमेंट सेगमेंट। थैंक यू सो मच, बाय। मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट पॉडकास्ट में, नेक्स्ट वीडियो में, नेक्स्ट लर्निंग सेगमेंट में। सो थैंक यू सो मच एंड बाय।